next we have After the Storm.
Yes, which is the new film from a Japanese director called Hirokazu Koreeda, who has made this flight of films about family life, what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a child, to raise a child, rather, over the last few years. Beginning with a film called I Wish a few years ago. Then from there he went on to make Like Father, Like Son, then Our Little Sister, and then this. Now, Koreeda's films tend to be very still and serene, very low conflict. In fact, in Our Little Sister, which begins with a funeral, I think the funeral is basically the only bad thing that happens in that film. Everything else is completely lovely, but he's unparalleled as a filmmaker in finding these little details of everyday life that contain sort of poetry and wonder, and he can tease it out in ways that totally belie the kind of workaday nature of what's actually happening in the film. As such, this plot summary will sound completely rubbish, and so you'll have to take it on trust if you've not seen a Koreeda film, that this is completely fascinating. In the Tokyo suburbs, there's this a once promising novelist, I think you described him, called Ryota, who's played by a Koreeda regular, Hiroshi Abe, and he is trying to write his second novel by taking a job at a detective agency, ostensibly to gather material. But this has become a furrow that he's very much now stuck in. He's also struggling to face up to his responsibilities as a father, and his son Shingo now lives with his ex-wife. And he's supposed to be providing maintenance payments to his ex-wife and to Shingo. But the money, when he earns it, he pretty much always spends straight away on gambling. He has this terrible gambling habit. And what becomes apparent quite quickly is that Ryota is making the same mistakes with raising his son that his father made, or similar mistakes that his father made while raising him. And even though he has these not particularly warm memories of his own upbringing, his father never really being able to provide properly for the family, he seems destined to repeat these mistakes. And weirdly, that is reflected, and very intentionally it's reflected, in his job at the detective agency, where he is, as a divorcee, complicit really in other people's divorces by following, because half the work is cheating couples, the other half is lost pets, and so he's following couples to love hotels and seeing what's going on and all there. So there's different parts of his life are all weird feedback loops of things that are happening in other parts of his life. The storm of the title is this approaching summer typhoon which is bearing down on the city, and which causes for not quite the film's second half, but almost the second half, Ryota to be stuck in his elderly mother's apartment, this very cramped room, basically. It's like 2 rooms in this working class neighbourhood, with his ex-wife, with his son, and with his elderly mother. And over the course of the storm, this long blustery night, they talk through things that suggest there are effectively 3 generations of anxieties about being a parent and a child, fears and hopes and things. And everything, all these different parts of their lives come to the surface so gently and with the subtlest gestures. I mean, you can imagine a Hollywood version of this film. Someone would sit down and say, well, 30 years ago when this happened, when I was a child and you were raising me, I really remember the big effect this had on me, and blah, 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 blah. Now, this is all condensed down by Koreeda into tiny gestures and reactions. There's a great detail where whenever the elderly mother, who's played by Kirin Kiki, who's another Koreeda regular, whenever she opens the fridge, Ryota's older sister just instinctively rocks forward in her seat to avoid the swing of the fridge door. And it is a gesture that tells you how this family have come to get used to living on top of each other, made accommodations for each other, but with just effortlessness. There is no artifice surrounding these performances at all. It's detail, 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 and you almost absorb it without thinking about it. There's no grand resolution to the story. It is, if you're familiar with Koreeda, you won't be expecting that anyway. But for me, this is really, it goes back to a film called Still Walking that he made in 2008 with some of these same cast members. This is absolutely up there at the forefront of his work. If you don't know Koreeda, this is the perfect time to discover him.